Now what will it be? Death or exile?
All right, we're gonna start with
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to.
Should we not follow the advice of the galactically stupid?
You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Worst part of it is they're gonna blame us for the whole thing. And they can't have people knowing the truth. We're the the cover-up. Don't forget, we're the Exiles.
Very well. Death by exile.
Welcome to another installment of the Film Exiles podcast. Tonight, the Exiles review A Star Is Born, the newly released picture by Warner Brothers and the directorial debut of Bradley Cooper himself. I am reviewing this film with Mike. How you doing today? Millennial Mike.
You always forget to say the millennial before the mic. Get it right, Manu.
I'm sorry. I promise that'll be the only mistake I make tonight.
Yeah, I'm entitled to that because I'm a millennial.
Yes, I'm sorry, sir. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. This movie is so fantastic. I'm so excited to talk about it. Try not to burst into tears while I'm listening to your guys' testimonials.
All right, great. We also have Gray. Gray, how you doing tonight, brother?
Greetings and salutations. How are you, my friends?
Doing pretty good, man. Great to have you back again.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And we welcome back Joy to the pod. Joy, how are you doing?
I am doing great.
And you are sounding great. So, the movie we are reviewing tonight is A Star Is Born, directed by Bradley Cooper, starring Bradley Cooper and, should we call her Lady Gaga, or...
I refuse to do that. I refuse to do that. She has a real name. She was not born. She did not come out, and her mama didn't go, "Oh, look at my little Gaga. Who's my little Gaga?" That did not happen.
But I
that
mean,
was probably the second thing she ever said, after Goo Goo, right?
I mean,
Good point.
She is credited as Lady Gaga in the film. Okay.
Go with it.
So we're gonna call her Stephanie.
I will.
Okay.
You guys call her whatever you want.
A quick plot synopsis of, A Star Is Born. A musician helps a young singer find fame, even as age and alcoholism send his own career into a downward spiral. So why don't we start with our overall thoughts on the film? Gray, why don't you get us started?
You know what? I really enjoyed the movie. From the first time I saw the trailers, I was immediately intrigued because I knew it was going to be Bradley Cooper's directorial debut, at least feature film. I haven't checked on anything else, and I'm always interested when actors want to cross that line and become directors. It's always fascinating to me, people who can bridge that divide. Jonathan Frakes did it very, very well. I think Ben Affleck also has done extremely well with that. So Bradley Cooper's in good company. Not a Lady Gaga fan, never have been. So she wasn't really a selling point for me, but I was impressed with her performance overall. I think the movie was really well put together. I think it's got a killer soundtrack. It hits all the right notes. There's things I can get into, later on, little kind of like storytelling digs that I can hit it with, but overall the movie works, and the movie works really well.
All right, great. Joy, what about you?
I had the opportunity to watch A Star Is Born, 1937, the original film, with Janet Gaynor and Frederick March this week, which, by the way, is still available on Amazon Prime Video. If you have that, I would recommend to give it a watch, because I think you'll really enjoy all the parallels. Bradley Cooper's 2018 remake remains very faithful to the original film, but with greatly modernized conventions and how he retells the story. There are a lot of great parallels between these films and how they are interpreted, spanning an 81-year divide, with particular interest to how the roles of women have evolved. It's a bit of a generational culture shock, unless you are really old movie buff. Bradley Cooper, has shown us with this film that he is more than just a pretty face and an accomplished actor. He not only directed, but also has a screenplay credit alongside Eric Roth, who has such credits as Forrest Gump, The Insider, Munich, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. He's been Oscar nominated 4 times with 1 win, so it should be no surprise the kind of quality writing we see in this film. For myself, the film really captures the spirit of this story, and it's told with such absolute love and care to the authenticity of the original without discarding that ugly veneer that lies beneath, where you learn that sometimes the darkness is ever present and you don't always escape your demons despite all your good intentions.
Well, Joy, put eloquently as always. Thank you very much. Mike, what about you? What are your thoughts on A Star is Born?
So, embarrassingly enough, I will go ahead and divulge this information. It wasn't until like a week after I watched the film that I realized that it was not a biopic and that Lady Gaga's name was not actually Ally and this wasn't her story.
It took you a week.
Wow.
It took me like a week. I watched the film. It wouldn't be the first time, Manu. But it's funny because I never said anything overtly like that would like tell you right away that that's how I felt about the movie. But I always spoke about the movie as if it were real because I thought it was actually real. And I don't know. I'm happy I went into the film that way because it was good. Like the performances were so genuine, and it just felt like something that could actually happen. It was so grounded. I was so immersed in the film that it really just came to life to me. So I don't have to worry about Lady Gaga's mental health, or at least not for the same reasons I did before anymore. But it was incredible. I'm happy that I got to see it. Got to see it again for sure.
Great. Well, I think we're all in agreement. I also really, really enjoyed this movie. I walked out of it feeling as though my heart was full. I felt so many different emotions, and I felt a deep connection to the characters, and I felt that for his first movie, Bradley Cooper really set the bar very, very high. This film kind of reminds me of an old, well, I mean, obviously it's a remake, but it does have that old Hollywood feel where the film is basically set up on the shoulders of its stars, and Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga like rise to the occasion, they rise to the challenge, and they give us a movie that I am looking very forward to watching over and over again when it comes out on home video, and it's a film that I really truly enjoyed. The soundtrack is amazing, the performances are touching, and the characters and their stories feel so genuine and authentic. It really felt like I got to know them, and the story is told eloquently. It's well written, but there's a lot going on beneath the surface, and I'm sure we're going to get into that later on in the pod. But all around, everything works. Everything works in this movie, and I hope that if you haven't seen it yet, that you give it a chance to see it, and that it fills your heart the same way that it filled mine.
Aww.
So, with that said, let's go over the spoiler wall and really get into A Star is Born. So why don't we get started on the performances? Joy, there's actually a pretty good cast here that's been put together by Cooper. Why don't you tell us who you felt stood out?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of sort of combine Cooper and Lady Gaga, or Stephanie for Grey, together.
For Grey.
Bradley Cooper's authenticity in this role was charmingly believable. For his directorial debut, he really hit a home run behind and in front of the camera. And who knew? He was a legitimate rock star. He did his own vocals, and as I understand it, there were no pre-recordings or lip-syncing done for any of the performances, and I think this was actually mandated by Lady Gaga. He brought an authentic sensuality to his chemistry with Lady Gaga, and in turn, and in her turn, the performances were electric. You could almost feel the atmosphere oozing with sensual chemistry between them. So everything about him felt completely natural. This is something Manu and I talked about earlier this week, about how Lady Gaga was really allowed to shine in this movie. She was given so many moments to show what turned out to be an amazing range of acting ability. So also something of importance to note in how her character gives a nod to her real persona. And I think it's important to mention, we all know how important LGBT issues are to her. She's a fierce advocate for these inalienable rights. She's been involved in efforts to overturn the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policies, to criticizing European countries, for the lack of their rights, and very notable, her recent opposition to Trump's transgender military ban. So with that in mind, the fact that her very first performance is in a drag bar surrounded by drag queens and possibly transgender individuals speaks volumes to her point of view being expressed, and that Cooper was completely on board with it. I feel like this was something he wanted to honor. And also on this note, we move on to when Jackson chooses a song to sing in the bar to one of the drag queens. He chooses a song with lyrics, "Maybe it's time to let the old ways die." I feel like this choice with such appropriate lyrics allowed for this kind of positive representation and really speaks to acceptance in the heart of his character. It hits on a major theme of the movie about having something to say. I also think this particular sequence gives us a great insight into the heart of his character. Despite all his demons, at the core of who he is, he's really a good guy.
I agree. Mike, you want to jump in?
Sure. So yeah, my favorite performance, I'd have to say, would be Bradley Cooper. I've seen him in a lot of different performances, and he always seems to bring something different to the table. He's really flexible, very versatile in the way that he expresses his character, and this was no different. I really liked the everything down to that voice that he did. You know, I don't really know how to express it, but it really made him feel as though he was becoming the character, and he was really it was really interesting.
Yeah, I love that voice, that like raspy kind of. Yeah, it just gave it gave his character this this feel that he's been through things. He's lived. He's lived. He's been through things, that he's experienced things that. Yeah. And I feel that really just added.
A little grizzled, you could say.
Yeah, grizzled. Yeah, that's the word. Yeah, great. Sorry.
No, that's fine. No, I appreciate the input, but his like Joy said, maybe to a lesser explicit degree. Bradley and Lady Gaga did have a lot of chemistry. I don't know about oozing and stuff, but but it was quite good. I really felt like it was genuine. Like they really, you could really feel the electricity between the two. It was very natural, and there wasn't a lot of dialogue in the moments that they were drawing closer and becoming closer in the relationship. There wasn't a lot of dialogue. The scenes they had dialogue were great, and there were some really good, discussions and back and forth between them. But there was a lot of unspoken moments, a lot of tacit understanding of their relationship that was going on behind the scenes, and those are my favorite parts. Some of them were like the one in the outside the grocery mart, which we'll get into, but during that scene, there was just so much happening outside of what was actually happening, and it was just so interesting to see that very strange situation unfold, but at the end of it, how they kind of drew closer because of it. So Bradley Cooper was definitely my favorite, and I think another one that I really liked, this is the last one I'll mention, is Sam Elliott's Bobby, Jack's, Bradley Cooper's character's brother in the movie. There was a lot of very damaged, broken characters in here who you could easily feel that they were maybe perhaps in the wrong, or they were just kind of unsavory to be around because of what they've gone through and kind of their history. But they all had some really great sensitive moments too that really made you empathize for the characters, and Sam Elliott's Bobby was really one of them. Particularly, they had a little spat later on in the movie, and after that was over, you really got to see kind of the angles that both of these characters were coming from, and the emotional baggage they sustained. It was really relatable and very very touching. So I liked his character. I'd say he's my second favorite.
All right, Gray, your turn.
Well, damn. I mean, there's only like 5 characters to pay attention to in the movie. You guys have already covered 3 of them.
I mean, you could give your insights on the ones that have already been noted.
Yeah, I tend to agree with everybody. I think there's always, when you're dealing with an actor who's coming in from a certain other profession, be it a musician crossing over to be an actor or an athlete or something like that, and their first major role, the first notable role is playing a character that is within that field, I think we tend to give them possibly a little bit more credit than maybe we should, because it's a little bit easier to create a character based on who you already are or based on people that you know very well than it is to get a script and get a character that is a person that you do not recognize, that is somebody that you don't necessarily have a relatable context for, and to be able to research that out and create a character for it. I am by no means saying that Stephanie didn't embody the character. She absolutely did, but as has been noted, that character was crafted in a way that was very close to her actual experience. And that makes it a little bit easier because all she has to do is draw on the experiences in her life that she's already had. It's a performance, and the performance is fine, but I don't really see it as creating a character as much as it is kind of characterizing herself, which looks new because we only see the Lady Gaga facade. So this is an opportunity for us. Yes, maybe we're getting a peek behind the false eyelashes, in a way that we haven't before. But I think the Oscar talk, it's more than a little bit premature. I really think we need to dial that back a little bit, because it's almost the same as saying, like, giving Ice Cube's son an Oscar nomination for playing his father in the NWA movie. It's like, he knows the guy, he grew up with the guy. He's not really creating a character, he's just playing somebody he already knows. It's not the same as, and I don't want to make this sound like a gendered issue because it's not, but it's not the same as Bradley Cooper creating that character of Jackson Maine. That character is a pastiche of broken rock stars and artists from like the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, people from the Allman Brothers or Leonard Skinner or those type of southern swamp rock bands, guys who came from destitute, broken homes with boatloads of issues that made their music really passionate, but also ate away at them until they eventually destroyed themselves. I mean, he's not creating a character. The reason his character works is because, again, it's a story that we all know. We've all heard that character's story before, but he had to create that character because he's not that person. It's a very, very different approach to what it is that the two performers did. They played off each other very well. They had a very natural chemistry between the two of them, which was good. I wouldn't say it was electric. I wouldn't say they were oozing anything, and they were believable within their relationship. But I couldn't really wrap my head around, other than the fact that he really liked the way she sang, couldn't really wrap my head around what it is that just immediately grabbed Jackson about Allie. I was never really able to make that connection, but I was able to, because their performances on screen was so effortless, I was able to go ahead and say, all right, well, there was obviously something there. I just don't know what it is. Let's just go. But I think it bears mentioning, if you're going to have something that's going to be that immediate and that electric, it's kind of got to be illustrated a little bit more than you have to believe it because we're telling you. I mean, that's not entirely true, but for my money, I'd like to get a little bit more build-up behind it, just because, the concept of that kind of instantaneous connection with somebody. I mean, I have had relationships that I feel have had instantaneous connections like that, and even I know that's bullshit. So I need a little bit more. And I only ever saw them really. You see them on stage together, and then a couple of times in the hotel room until they sleep together. And that's kind of like, all right, is that what we're going to see? Is that all you're going to give us? I didn't really buy it from a storytelling point of view, but performance-wise, is perfectly fine.
Okay.
We accept that.
Of course.
Everyone's coming after my ooze. What's going on?
Ew. There had to have been a better way you could phrase that.
There is, but I won't.
Okay.
I really enjoyed almost every performance in this movie, but Bradley Cooper is, I think, the standout. The fact that he was acting, singing, and directing, I think that his performance really shone through. Every act that Jack did, every sound he made, every movement, everything is just so calculated and calibrated for you to feel and understand how deep in his own pain that he is. And it continues to show up in some pretty subtle ways, as well as some very, big ways that, we're going to talk about later on. But I just feel like he completely lost himself in this role, which must have been very difficult to do when you keep in mind all of the things that he had to do to get this film right. I think that his arc and what he brought to this role is always going to be understated. I really love Lady Gaga. I will say that. I think that I was very surprised, and Gray, you might have touched on something when you say that it might be because she does come from a musical background. I didn't know what to expect from her, but she brought this authenticity to Ali that I found really refreshing, and that I connected with her instantly. I felt that just like Jack just saw her and fell for her, I think that in some ways I did as well. There's just something about the energy that she possesses and the way that she puts it all out there. When she's singing La Vie en Rose, I honestly love that song already, but her rendition of it is so powerful. And the way that entire scene is put together, it's all makes her shine that much brighter. I love Sam Elliott in this role. He, just like Cooper, you can tell that they've been through it. You can tell that they're men of like a bygone era who know what true pain is, and you can hear it in their voices. That fight that Mike was talking about earlier, and that scene when the camera is framing both of their faces as they're standing inches apart, and you can just feel so much history, so much, and so many different conflicting emotions going back and forth between the two at the same time. It jumps off of the screen, and that is probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie. And Dave Chappelle, although he had a very small role, I loved his scene with Bradley Cooper. When I mentioned earlier that my heart is felt full, that was honestly one of them, when they're sitting outside and they're talking, and he gives that great speech about leaving port and like finding yourself where you never expected. And Dave Chappelle is like, he's a comedian, and we often look down on comedic actors. I think Mike and I and Joy and I were speaking this week about Steve Carell. I mean, I think that slowly he's been gaining more and more respect with the roles that he's been taking over the past few years, but we tend to look down upon comedians or people with comedic backgrounds. But I loved his scene with Bradley Cooper because, again, there's just this authenticity. It feels like they're friends. It feels like they've known each other for so long, that they've been through so much together, and those things really help to tell this story. So does anybody else have anything to add about the performances? Joy?
Speaking about Dave Chappelle, I really enjoyed this scene too. I felt like in the conversation with him and Jackson, that Jackson saw a potential future.
Yes.
Through what Noodles was, with how Noodles' life is now, and I think it was just really just a validation that he's in a good place. And even though he arrived there sort of in shambles, he realized that he was sort of in a good place, and that he had to make a stand, to stay there.
Even the way that the shot is actually framed, it helps to give that impression as well. How it's kind of like the camera's on the ground and it's kind of looking up at the two. And Dave Chappelle is like a head higher than Bradley Cooper, as if it's like, for me, I got the impression that Jack needs to find a way to get to this place, and I got that feeling just from the way that the camera was framed in the shot.
Yeah.
There's one more thing I want to address. I want to address some of Gray's comments about how Lady Gaga's and
Stephanie.
Jackson or Stephanie, so no one gets confused. Stephanie and Jackson's a relationship. How they came into that relationship and how it took off. I think that, given Jackson's character, that his attraction to her, the thing that really sort of drove it over the top, was intellectual, because he's a guy that is looking for art and meaningfulness and soulfulness in his music. And when she comes along and she's making a song up right in front of him, and the lyrics are practically describing him to a T, that there is a connection there that's on a level that's not just oozing sensuality or physical. I think the higher connection is an intellectualism that they share.
Sure, I'm happy you mentioned that, because later on, what was it? Jack said something about, was it 7 notes, and every artist had 12 notes.
12 notes in an octave,
and the octave repeats.
Yeah, I'm not a music guy, as you can tell. But
it's what you do with those 12 notes.
Sure,
it's what you say with those 12 notes that makes the difference.
And the idea is that everyone has the same material, the same opportunities. You just have to take advantage of that to say what is you're going to say. It kind of speaks on, both. It's a metaphor, and it was a really good metaphor at that. And I think that really is what attracted Jack to Allie, not just, once again, the way that she sung, or it sounds good.
And I get all that, and I acknowledge all that. It's all in the storytelling, but even when you start looking at that as the metaphor, I mean, he's talking about being truthful and being honest, having your voice. It was the source of the conflict between he and his brother. I stole your voice basically because you weren't using it, because you didn't have anything to say.
And too proud
there's all that talk that goes on, and I don't know I don't really feel like they ever really got to that with her character, and I think that's what bothers me. I think that's what really, really bugs me. Even when we get down to the end of the film, she's singing that song, which was honestly the only production number in the movie that I thought was too much, and I was really, really happy when it snapped back at the very end to just the two of them at the piano. But even when you get down to that, she's singing the song, and it's this big emotional number. And after all this talk about finding your voice and finding what you have to say, it's not even her song. It's the song he wrote for her. So I feel a lot of that got lost somewhere in the shuffle, and maybe that was the whole point. Is she now she has an opportunity to actually find her voice because he's not there anymore, which is kind of the sad tragedy of it. I don't know, because we're not going to get to that point, because that's when the movie ends. But it just I just didn't get that. I didn't get that feeling. He saw the potential in her. He knew that potential was there. He tried to draw it out of her, and it got her noticed, and as soon as it did, she put that aside to have a career, to have this whole other career doing something completely different.
Those are really good points. I think that there's a lot of sentimentality in this movie, a lot. So I think that even though this movie did a good job explaining a lot of what goes on in the story and detailing it well and communicating it well, I think that the little cracks that there are in the movie could have been easily, coated over with the sentimentality of the movie. It just sweeps you away with the experience of the whole thing that you don't really see those things. After watching it the first time, I'm not going to act like I fully comprehend this movie. So that's really good on you. I agree with what you're saying logically. I don't feel it because I probably have to watch it again to completely understand.
Oh yeah, the movie functions on a very high emotional level, and it's designed to. I mean, it's not a plot driven movie; it's a performance driven movie. But I'm a plot and storytelling guy. Performance is
that's why we have you on here.
But I'm a plot and storytelling guy. That's my bread and butter right there. So that's what I'm going to focus in on, and I tend to notice those things a little bit more because I'm easy to emotionally manipulate. So I have to have a certain barrier up when I go into these things, or I will completely miss everything else.
I really appreciate the honesty. A lot of people would not be able to say that. Before we move on, I just want to add real quick. I really liked Rafi Grafan, who played Rez, who's the manager who brings in Ali.
Oh, what a douche!
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. I really liked how Bradley Cooper intelligently casted somebody very, very young in the role. He stood out instantly. Bradley and his brother are like the old school, and this guy is like this. The new school is supposed to represent like the current state of like the music industry, and I just really enjoyed that, especially the scene with the socks. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm pretending. I'm like pretending not to wear socks." I thought that was such it's one of those like subtle touches. Like you could have taken that out the movie, but just that moment, like that's just a real quick commentary about where things are right now in that industry. That we have a lot of people pretending to be something that they're not, and you're taking away the best parts of the music, the best part of the music. And it's so, and I love that scene took place right before he took her outside and he showed her billboard. Like, I mean, we'll get more into that later, but I really, really enjoyed his character. I like that he was in there, and just those few moments with him, his douchiness, I think that it goes to show just how the music industry has changed from a time when men like Jax were on top to a time when we're trying to create these pop sensations.
Now it's interesting that you bring that up because I want to make sure this gets in there because it was something that was on my mind from the very first trailer. The first trailer when I saw Jackson and Ali and the performance footage and everything like that, I honestly could not tell if the movie was going to be a period piece because I knew that there was a version of the movie that had been made in the 70s with Barbra Streisand and Chris Christopherson. It was 76 or something like that. And I was wondering, it's like, are they just going to basically remaking that movie and putting it in that time period? And then I would see I think it was I saw the shot of Jack in the leaning out of the window of the SUV, and I'm like, well, that's a modern car. But those two characters immediately, they're the way that they're dressed and the type of music that they're making and everything like that is so anachronistic with with this time period. It was, to me, I had a little bit of trouble resolving that the movie is supposed to be taking place in 2017, 2018 or something like that, and Jackson Maine is on top of the music world doing this throwback swamp rock kind of thing that he can walk into a drag bar in bumfuck wherever the hell he was and all the drag queens know him by name and can put his music on and are asking this thing. That didn't, for some strange reason, I had a lot of trouble squaring that, and then squaring how Ali goes from doing her Carole King, one woman, one piano, kind of Tori Amos kind of thing, to being that movie's version of Lady Gaga or Britney Spears or whatever, and the fact that there was a producer who saw her on stage doing that thought, oh, good, we'll put her in a wig and slather her with makeup and put her out with a bunch of dancers and she'll do pop music and that will be absolutely no problem. It was a bridge that intellectually I had just too much trouble spanning. I just had a lot of trouble connecting those dots.
Wow.
All right. Before we move on to themes, Joy, do you have anything to add on the performances?
It's funny. My one word note under Rez's character was douchebag.
Yeah, because he was. How is it that nobody wants to hold him responsible for what happened to Jack?
I mean, because after that, you don't see him again. I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
No.
really
That's
behind-
no. Because you see him backstage with Allie.
Oh, yeah, and he's
Where
like,
she's
he's
like,
not
where's
here
Jack?
yet,
Where's
yeah.
Jack? Oh yeah, I don't know where he is. It's like, dude, what a dickbag. Everything he said was like, okay, maybe it was true, but Jesus Christ, what a horrible fucking person. And the fact that he's never, it always bothers me just a little bit when characters do things like that and they're allowed to get away with it. Because he essentially did get away with it. We don't know what happens afterwards, so that means, hey, I got this guy to hang himself and I get off scot-free. What an asshole.
It's like subversion. He's got his eye on the prize. He wants to transform Allie into what his standard pop star mold is, into this cotton candy singer. And she wants to retain her identity, but he uses her insecurities to convince her she needs to be something else.
That's exactly what he does.
And that's probably a very, I think would be a very common thing that happens out there. And,
I'm sure it is. But
he convinces her it's her idea. This lie is conveyed to Jackson in a pernicious effort to drive a wedge between him and Allie. I don't think he's doing it for the purpose of having him kill himself. I mean,
no, but he definitely wants him out of the way.
Yeah, unless if he knew his history, it would be an even more evil act.
I'm pretty sure he did. They seemed fairly familiar with each other. He had to have known.
That is
where
true.
Joy is coming from when you're talking about when he lies to Jackson, and is that scene, is the sock scene.
Yeah.
Is that scene? You can tell that Jackson knows exactly what he's doing.
Oh yeah, he does.
And Gray, you're also right because Rez is on the tour. Because we can't, like, the night that Ali sings the first time, he's there. He's by the bus. He's there. And I do believe that he is a long-standing fan of Jackson, actually. Because in that last scene that they have together where he's being the douchebag, when Jackson talks about when he went to Europe, Rez knew exactly the date. He said it was summer 2004.
Right.
So that leads me to believe that he must have been there because his accent lets you know that he's from across the pond. So I bet that he was a long-standing fan of Jackson. So that there's no doubt in my mind that there is a familiarity between them, that there is this connection pre-Ali, and that Jackson knew exactly what Rez was up to. But he did not want to get in the way of Ali's.
Oh, absolutely, he did. Well, that's obviously the reason that he went ahead and did it. It was an extreme version of that because he couldn't leave her. It was one of those, I can't not be with you and be in this world.
And she wouldn't leave.
And she wouldn't have done it either. But the problem I have with all that is it means if we're looking at this in the most shallow terms possible, it means that Rez wins because we have no idea what Allie is going to do. She never says, and this is one of the reasons reasons that I get really nitpicky about the process of storytelling because she doesn't ever talk about what she's going to do. As far as the movie leaves it, she's just going to keep doing what she has been doing, and that just bugs the shit out of me.
I actually disagree. I think that when she's singing that song at the end, like you said, you felt that it's too much, but I think that the fact that when she's singing that song, there is none of the stuff that Rez added. It's her face, it's her hair, and
it's also a performance. It basically at a wake, at a very public wake. So I mean, I don't think you're really going to bust out the background dancers and the glowing guitar. But the interesting note at that point is, now for somebody who had only gone by her first name the entire movie, when she comes out and says that, I'm Allie Main, finally taking on his last name, I mean, that makes a statement about her feelings about Jackson, finally, coming out and saying, no, this is who I am, I am Allie Main, I'm not this one name person, but I don't know what's going to happen after that, and I just don't like that kind of
open-endedness.
And that kind of open-endedness in this kind of movie, because it's supposed to be the story about a person, getting to a certain place, and then we don't get to that place with them.
Okay, I can respect that. Mike, do you have anything to add?
No, I honestly, like I said, I watched the movie once. It was a lot to take in. I was really swept away in the whole sentimentality of everything, so I didn't really comprehend as much as you guys have. You guys are picking apart like these nuances that I did not pick up on. So yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. So let's move on and jump into the themes. Gray, do you want to get us started on anything in particular?
Oh, let's see. I'm honestly big on the theme of having something to say. Now, you guys don't know this about me, but about 1 million years ago, I was a songwriter. I was a musician, and I started doing that out of having this real kind of this pain inside me that I see now is it's kind of a shallow pain, but at the time those kind of shallow things, when you have no context for them, they all look like the Grand Canyon. They look like the deepest, darkest thing in the world. And to me, it was always very important to be honest about what I was talking about, and to be honest with you, I never wanted to be a songwriter that just wrote about stuff. It had to be something real. So I really, really keyed into the idea of having a voice and having something unique to say. And this is not just something that's just related to music either. I mean, this is something that you hear filmmakers talk about all the time. Dave Chappelle himself has always talked about, as a comedian, having a unique point of view and having some, not just going out and telling jokes, having something genuine to say. So this is a big, cuts across a wide swath of artistic fields. This kind of divide between people who are talented and can do things and people who maybe aren't as talented but have something inside that they just need to get out. And that was something that I appreciated, how strongly the Jackson Maine character leaned in on that, because he's got a great voice for what he does, but he's not a great singer. It's the expressiveness in the voice. It's the words that he uses. The song "Maybe It's Time." I mean, that's a song that Bradley Cooper wrote. That's his song, which I didn't know that. I thought it was just like an old standard or something like that. But the things that he's talking about in there, he's talking about change. He's talking about how nobody talks to God, and how God is probably looking down and laughing at us, and how. There's a line in the fourth verse. As when I was a child, they tried to fool me, said the worldly man was lost and that a hell was real. Well, I've seen hell in Reno, and this world's one big old Catherine wheel. Just like having that to say, and a lot of it coming from his perspective, being in this industry and being a quote unquote movie star, and being able to see all of these intricacies and both sides, the dark and the light side of life. That to me is so important, and it's so great to see somebody create a character that makes this so important, because it's so easy to be shallow. It's so easy to put on the facade and just go out there and just do a thing and make the money, and then go in the back and party, and we see it all the time. And I in the last few years, for me, I've been seeing it in music, and I've been seeing it in filmmaking. This clash coming up between people who are trying to say something, and audiences that want people to say something, and the ones that are just like, no, just entertain us, just get up there and just dance for us, monkey, drop your pants, and whatever, just amuse us for 15 minutes, and then go the fuck away, because nobody wants to deal with your shit. So that to me was the most most important and most welcome aspect of the film.
That's awesome. Joy, what about yourself?
Yeah, that was a beautiful statement, Gray. On that, topic of having something to say, I think one of the most pivotal lines in the movie is when Jackson recognizes the effect that Reza's having on her message. He takes her out to the balcony and tells her, "If I don't say this now, I will always regret it," paraphrasing, to make sure she holds on to her soul, otherwise she won't have any legs.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is further explored when she goes to the SNL gig and she sings a song that sounds nothing like her.
Why did you do that?
That's all about that ass.
It's a song that just oozes ass.
It oozes ass, yes, thank you. And he turns around, he walks away, he grabs a bottle of booze, and and then fast forward to the bathroom scene where this is continued. He becomes cruel when she doesn't acknowledge what he's saying. Mm-hmm. That he doesn't understand how she got nominated for a Grammy. Which of course escalates into something really ugly. But yeah, I think the message is incredibly important.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but he hadn't been up to that point. He hadn't been drinking. It seemed like in the movie he was pretty much sober at that point. Those beers.
I think
no.
I mean, drinking since the very first time you seen him.
No. But I mean, he had that point where he went out, or was it after? Did he stop drinking after the big fight?
He stopped drinking. Yeah,
okay,
he stopped drinking after the fight until
after
the
SNL.
Grammy.
Yeah, after the Grammy.
Until the SNL.
Until the SNL.
It was at the SNL when she started singing.
That's when he would grab those couple of beers.
Yeah, and that's when his brother showed up. Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's what I'm thinking. That to me is like he was all in until he saw this is what's happening. Jesus Christ, I need a drink.
And it kept, because it killed him to see her like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she finally began to see the effect that it was having, because after they have the blowout, he comes back earlier from his trip, and again, this is some of that subtle storytelling to let you know that his career is not going the way that it should be going.
Mm-hmm.
That is going. So he comes back early from this trip, and he goes to her rehearsal space, and she sees him, and she goes over to him, and she's like, "What are you doing here?" And they apologize, and then he wants to stay and drive her home, but she's like, no, what? Go home. Because she understands that he can't stand to see what she's doing.
Yeah.
Sorry, Joy, go ahead.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's important to note too, particularly at the part with the SNL performance, is that there's more going on than just seeing what she's singing and picking up that bottle of booze. His tinnitus is deteriorating to a significant level, and I think that this is something that is compounding his initiative to self-medicate.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. And also, that's another great piece of Bradley Cooper's performance. It's the way that he keeps showing it through these physical cues. When for example, that SNL gig, when his brother comes and he says something, and Bradley leans in, and he has to repeat himself, and you can tell that it's getting worse. Mm-hmm. And there's many moments like that where he's just leans his head in that cool way. He runs his hand through his hair, and you can tell through the movie, just through those cues, that it's progressing.
Getting bad.
Yeah, it's getting worse. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I thought that. You brought up, Manu, the idea that his career is starting to be on the downside. I really thought that was not as emphasized as I
it really wasn't. It was very subtle. I think at one point he says, "Yeah, I have to go do this gig that I never thought that I would do." And it's just there in the
it was like a corporate paid gig.
Yeah, exactly. It's not prominent, but it's there in the background, and that's also part of it. He's seeing his star burn out as hers is rising. They're both going in different directions for very different reasons, and that's also accelerates his drinking. And
I feel like that they chose to emphasize and I think that this was a good choice, because I know that in the older films it was the drinking and everything was more about the it was kind of a combination effect. His career would flag and he would drink, and then his career would get worse, and blah blah blah. And I think by choosing to focus instead on the emotional reasons for that, which from what I understand were never really underpinned in any of the other films. It was just kind of a, hey, he's just like old and burning out and he drinks. But this giving him a reason to do that, I actually think it was a lot. Even if his career was still stellar at that point, the idea that he's still, I mean, almost more importantly, or more emphasizes the idea that he's got it all. He's on top of the world, and he's still drinking himself to death because of these things boiling under him. I think that was a really, really good storytelling decision.
Yeah. Joy, carry on. Sorry, we cut you off.
No problem. I was going to move on to another topic if no one else has anything to.
Mike hasn't said anything. Mike, do you have anything to add on having something to say before Joy takes us into a new direction?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the themes go, I mean, having them something to say was definitely a part of it. I kind of really appreciated the theme about addiction with Jack, really, because it handled it in a very realistic way. How he kind of went in and went out, and he had relapses throughout the whole thing, and how it was kind of driving a wedge between him and his brother and Ali, and how Ali was talking about it was Bobby. I really like the one quote in there. Bobby was talking about how he can't be on tour with him, clean up his mess, and be protecting his father's farm, which they put like a what do they do to it? They put like a wind farm, something like that. They built over it, and just kind of seeing that, play out so realistically and so genuinely was really a big part of it. And I think that that kind of also could kind of tie into the one quote about how everyone has 12 notes and it happens over and over again, and basically the way that you interpret it's how you see it. That mainly kind of goes into what you have to say, how you interpret the world, your perspective on things. But it also kind of had a sort of so in the very beginning when he's going to that one bar and you see the billboard in front of it with the nooses hanging from it, it's like it was. You see that at the beginning of the film, and then coincidentally at the end of the film, he hangs himself. It's kind of like this symbolism for the mindset he was in, kind of repeating itself. That also goes and kind of parallels to his addiction, kind of parallels to the quote about the 12 notes, and kind of like how he was stuck in this loop throughout his entire life, and Ali kind of would kind of have been stuck in that loop along with him if he didn't, I guess, fulfill what he always thought was what was going to happen. That's kind of something that
as Noodle said, she was the way out.
Yeah, that was a good quote too. So I really just, it's not so much. I mean, it is a theme, not so. I don't have too much to say about it, but I felt like it was a really poignant theme that kind of permeated the whole entire movie that I really appreciated.
You said plenty, actually, to be honest with you.
Oh. Joy, well, compared to what else, compared to me.
Joy, carry on.
All right, I want to move on to something that we see in her with her insecurities.
Yes.
And I kind of want to introduce an idea that you may or may not agree with. I think many of her insecurities arise from an abusive relationship with an alcoholic mother. Although we never see this, and it's never really discussed, the only glimpse of her mother is a black and white wedding photo on the wall at the bottom of the stairs. She has a healthy relationship with her father now, but you can tell they came from a very dark place to get where they are now. You might even question if there's some subtext in her telling Jackson she will never get on the motorcycle with him when he's been drinking. So maybe you infer that her mother may have died driving intoxicated. Of course, this is just pure speculation. Given some of the cues in the film, you can decide for yourself. you can see the toll it takes on her when she's afraid Jackson won't want to be with her when he's completely sober. So all her life she's being told by industry people they don't like the way she looks. And when Rez comes along and tells her she needs to change the way she looks, I mean, that was just sort of a heartbreaking moment given her, her history that we know about her.
Very insightful.
Yeah,
I totally agree, Joy. I had the same thought about her mother, yeah. Go ahead, Gray. Sorry.
No, I never really. I don't know. Maybe this is just because of just where my head is. I always assumed that the whole relationship with alcoholism was with her father, just because he was still there, and it's possible to forgive people who have, or it's possible to continue to have a relationship with people who have been through addiction and come out the other side, and you forgive them, but you always still kind of have something against them.
I actually see what you're saying, but the reason why I lean more towards what Joy said is because there's a line in the film where she tells her dad, where her dad is kind of like trying to like push her towards being with Jackson, and she tells him he's a drunk. You know all about being with a drunk, something along those lines. I don't know if that's exactly the word.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. I thought that she does say I can't, and I wish I could remember the exact line too, because that's when I couldn't tell
that she was talking about the mother and not him.
And that's when I thought she was talking about him.
Okay, all right. So we have different interpretations on that.
Well, it's just a matter. Neither one of us remembers what the actual line is.
I don't think she actually says, you know what it's like to be with a drunk. I think she says, you know what that's like. I think that's something along those lines. I think it leaves it open enough for us to go on different paths on it.
Oh no, I plan to get the movie when it comes out on disc. I'll know for certain what it says.
I believe you. I'm sure. I have no doubt. And then you're gonna tweet at me like, "I told you, Manu. I told you."
Yeah. Well,
I'll come back and say I was wrong.
I did say it today. I did see it today again, and so maybe it's a little fresh in my memory. But I think that when she told him, "You know what that's like," I don't believe she used any pronoun to go with that, or any. I think they're kind of leaving it to the viewer to interpret what she's talking about. I could be wrong because my memory is not. I'm not an elephant. Whatever.
But no, I think it's cool that everybody picked up on that, because I don't know if because it is a moment that goes by fairly quickly, and you more or less have to read the moment on Andrew Dice Clay's face to really get something out of it.
And that's one of the things that I love about this film, is that there are so many moments like that like what I was talking about, like there's like this history, like these characters all have these like long histories, and the film doesn't tell you everything, but like if you pay attention, you can like you can get clues and like these details that help you kind of like form a picture about who these characters are. Like I was saying, like about Rez being a fan of Jackson, like like that is something that I got just from that one line that he said.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, you also got when you're talking about the insecurity issue, like as Joy brought up, I find it very interesting if we tie that into the conversation about being truthful and having something to say. It does kind of like present this message that says, look, you can go ahead and you can have people feed on your insecurities, and you can change everything about you, and you can take get the easy path to where it is you're going, or you can stay true to yourself and have something to say, and it might be more difficult, but it's going to be more fulfilling in the end.
Yeah, and it's all about the honesty in art. You have to bring who you are, because because like Jackson keeps telling her, all you have is who you are and like what you have to say, and if you lose that, people can tell. People know. Like people always know when your art is authentic. Mike, do you have anything else to add?
No, I'm out. I'm out of themes.
Joe, what about you?
I am not out of themes.
Give it to me, girl. You know I love
I am never out of themes.
She's oozing.
I am oozing. We're gonna do some more oozing later.
I think this whole ooze thing should have a theme, man. I'm serious.
I made sure to mark our podcast explicit on SoundCloud, so we're good. Okay.
Okay. I want to talk about sacrifice. Um, as we build into the final climax, there is a paradoxical sense of selfishness and selflessness in Jackson's final act. And I just want to say I'm using the term selfishness very loosely here, and mostly to make a juxtaposition, because the act itself may not inherently be selfish if it's not done in sound mind and was experiencing a distorted perception of reality. The result of which takes you away from the very people who love you and the ones he was trying to protect. Although there is a sense of calmness and acceptance from Jackson after his conversation with Rez that not only foreshadows but also makes you think he is of sound mind. Then selflessness, because he feels he cannot trust himself to not bring her down, and he loves her so much that he's willing to fall on his own sword. We have come to get to know Jackson and know the love he has for Allie and the kind of soul he possesses and his commitment to making his art matter. So when he comes to this final resolution, it makes me feel very conflicted because I understand his motivations, even if I don't agree with his solution. You know, the resulting act itself is appalling when he hangs himself, even though you know he has a history of at least one attempt prior to this. Much of this eventual sacrifice is foreshadowed. We see the billboard with the four nooses, you know, his story about trying to hang himself with a belt when he was 13 and a drunk father who didn't even notice. And then there was that last song he wrote, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. I wanted to hit on Jackson's decline, as it's not just one thing. In this version, it's twofold, where the main theme of his decline is watching his protege Allie get acclaim and great success, while he is falling deeper into addiction and phoning in his own performances. So much so, he's sidelined to playing guitar for someone else at the Grammy performance. You know, she even accuses him of envy, albeit in a playful way. It still hits home. Then there's the added stressor of his deteriorating condition of tinnitus because of his refusal to use the earpieces. He chooses to self-medicate with booze and pills. I think it's also worthy to note that he's getting steroid shots. Aside from any normal side effect of steroids, combined with excessive drinking, is known to exacerbate them and also depression. So we kind of see all these things coming together to create this immensely disastrous cocktail for Jackson. Now, there is something I do want to talk, another thing I want to introduce, whether you agree with me or not. When Jackson is in rehabilitation, Allie finds a piece of paper with lyrics tucked away in a book. Now, it's my interpretation, because this is how Jackson communicates. It's how he puts into words what he wants to say through lyrics. I think this is actually a goodbye letter to Allie, or maybe even a suicide note. If you listen closely to some of the lyrics that she sings in the final scene, from what he wrote, although it's not like directly on the nose, the lyrics talk about, I wish I could have said goodbye. I would have said what I wanted to, maybe even cried for you. If I knew it would be the last time, I would have broke my heart in two trying to save a part of you. Don't want to start another fire. I'll never love again. And he also references I'm not moving on. So you might say these lyrics are a love song in any other context, but I think given the state of mind and that he tried to hide it with the idea that she might one day find it, sort of makes me think he was contemplating suicide prior to his rehabilitation too.
I'm actually really glad you said that, because the only thing that stuck out to me is that Allie wasn't writing anymore. Because if she had, she would have opened up the notebook and seen the
That's a good point.
Letter. Like I didn't think about. For me, it was just that she hadn't been writing in some time.
Yeah. And it was definitely obvious that his depression influenced a lot of the decisions and the songs that he made. Because the songs he sang were beautiful. They were all very, very poignant. Very there was a certain kind of sadness to all of his songs. I mean, even you guys got one thing out of the song, but maybe some let the old ways die, or I'm not sure what the song title was called. I mean, he could have easily been the old ways,
No,
his
I was gonna say that too. I think that song
yeah,
is also talking about his suicide. If you
yes,
listen to the lyrics, nobody knows what awaits for the dead. Nobody knows
yes,
what awaits for the dead.
yes.
It's just
So yeah,
everything he touches, it's imbued with this sadness and with just being at the end of his rope, and like everything. It comes out in every time that he sings. Great. Do you have anything to add?
I'm just she's got me looking over the lyrics every now and again. I have a really, I've never known anybody who's taken their own life, but I just kind of have this, because I've been down that road a couple of times. I'm like any other, red-blooded 40-year-old nerd sitting behind a computer. I deal with depression and things like that, and I think about that horrible darkness. And I can never allow myself to be resigned to an idea that suicide is ever selfless. Suicide is never something you do for somebody else. Suicide is always about you. It's always about whatever's happening to you. You can justify it by saying, because that's what we do. We say, oh, these people would be better off without me. Life will be easier on them if I'm gone, blah, blah, blah. But that's never what it's about. It's always about you. You're never thinking about another person when you do it. So this idea that I'm gonna do this because it'll be better for her, it's just cowardly. It's just a way of not addressing the issue, and I will never allow myself to see that as a thing that he did with any manner of nobility. First of all, the fact that he had to get loaded up on pills before he did it. That is not a person who was convicted to doing anything. He had to get himself in a very inebriated state of mind to allow himself to perform this act. It's terrible. He was guilted into doing it. He was scared. He was frightened because he didn't know whether or not he could control himself. He was afraid of the future. Yes, fine. He might have impacted her career. She might not have gone to Europe. All these other things might not have happened. But if he'd have stayed with her, she may have come back to that place that he felt was better for her. That place of honesty, because he would have removed her from that environment. So now all he's done is he's just basically he's put a boot on her back and kicked her out in the world, said good luck fucker, and put her out there on her own. Now she's got this person who, despite all of his problems, was so intrinsic to her awakening and such an emotional can opener for her in a lot of ways, and he just ripped that right away from her. That is an incredibly selfish, self-centered, cowardly thing to do, and I will never look at it as anything beautiful or anything noble ever.
So let me expound on that point a little bit, and let me kind of scale back a little bit and kind of talk about not only this act and this idea and mentality and kind of like storytelling in this movie, but in movies in general, not just in this context, but the larger context. There's a lot of things, especially in movies so sentimental like this, that if you look hard, there's positivity in this film, but there's a lot of negativity in this film. I mean, these are the kind of films where it's most emotionally manipulative, but not necessarily in a bad way. Typically, we say that when we're criticizing a film or some sort of work of art, is that it's emotionally manipulative, but all films are emotionally manipulative, in some way or another. Just about whether it's effective, whether it's easy, if it's low-hanging fruit or not, Yeah. And I feel like, we're always trying to search for beauty in things that are really just sad, So it's like, in this particular instance, it's like if you're trying to talk about whether it was like there's any positivity or there's any good in what he did, Well, I think, of course, in the context of real life, I don't think so. I don't think it's healthy to entertain that thought beyond, the immersion and the experience of the movie that you're watching. Nevertheless, I do think it can definitely move you in a way because you're really feeling what these characters are feeling in the moment, and if you're not thinking about it, completely logically, which I do have the ability to do, then sometimes it can just get you in a certain emotional state of mind that can feel less negative than the actuality of the matter is. So,
okay.
But yeah, just kind of to expound on your thoughts. But no, I wouldn't take away any of that from what you said, because it's all true and it's very logical. Although it's a little bit of a bummer.
Sorry, I'm not here to shine your shoes, pal.
All right, so why don't we carry over and move into our favorite moments and scenes of this film? Joy, why don't you get us started?
Well, I got a couple favorite scenes. Some that ooze with sensuality.
Ooze away, darling.
Are we watching the same movie?
The scene where he touches her nose and you can see her lips slightly parted. I thought this was a really sexy shot without
The
being
ooze was actually just snot.
Oh, so that was it. Okay.
That's not sensuality. That's just snot.
I think we understand why you're on a podcast tonight and not out. Okay. And then
what an ice pack? Because she just kicked you right in the nuts.
Get you some frozen peas. All right.
Oh, man.
Then, of course, there's the head turn while she's lying down in the bar and that searing eye contact. Now, come on. Don't tell me that's not oozing something. That is a beautiful shot.
Okay.
All right, I'm alone. That's okay. Moving on. I'm going to go to the opposite end of the spectrum and tell you that one of my other favorite scenes is morbid, and I'll probably get some flack for this, but it is the garage scene. I feel like the belt serves as a completely separate antagonist because we know the history of the belt already. Mm-hmm. The composition of the way this was shot is masterfully done and is visual storytelling at its finest. The thudding of his cowboy boot on the pavement, the wobbling of his legs, then the belt ominously hangs next to him as if it's grimacing at you. The approach to the workbench, slow, calculated, as if Kronos himself stops time but for a moment. You wait, and you wait, and you wait, and finally you see that slow descension of his iconic hat, slowly, apprehensively descending until it rests on the workbench for the very last time. And everyone knows what's coming. There's like a sense of dread that you are keenly aware that this can have no other ending. Now, yeah, the scene is morbid, and some of you don't like the way he resolved it, but I think the composition of this scene was just outstanding.
Wow.
I agree.
Mike, go ahead. What about you? Favorite moments and scenes?
Well,
not all of them, but just we'll go around a couple of times.
As you can tell, I've been more quiet than I normally am, so perhaps after everything is said and done, it'll be actually even. But man, my favorite scene would probably be the one where he's in rehab. Jack is in rehab, and Allie comes to visit him. Just the whole scene itself, because they've gone through so much, and every time he kind of goes into this stupor, it's kind of funny because the last time, I think, before this particular scene, I think Allie tells Jack that she's not going to clean up his messes anymore. Mm-hmm. Was that the one before the rehab scene, I believe?
That was when she finds him when he's in her
Memphis.
bed.
No, he's in Memphis.
Is he in Yeah.
He's in Memphis. She finds him at Noodle's house in Memphis.
Okay.
Yeah. So it could have even been a few times before that, because Allie I remember by that time in the movie, Allie they got into a fight, I believe, and she tells him that she's done cleaning up after him. So I was like, oh, okay, so she's putting the foot down. Like, this is gonna be the last time. If anything happens, that raises the stakes. But I think by this time, it was yet another issue he had gotten onto it was the Grammys, was the last incident before the rehab, I believe.
Yeah.
And that was the big mess up. But I really just appreciated that scene so much because of his overall, his sadness and his remorse for what he had done, and just kind of seeing them resolve that together. It kind of showed where they were kind of at emotionally. That basically, they were in for the long haul, and I just kind of really appreciate that from a purely sentimental standpoint. So,
yeah, very cool.
Great. What about you?
There are a couple of really nice moments that I like. I found myself getting really choked up. It's a real quick thing after Bobby's brought him home from rehab, and he's getting out of the truck, and he tells him, the whole thing about, when I stole your voice, it wasn't Dad that I idolized, it was you, and the fact that there isn't. He says that, and he just closes the door and leaves. There isn't an additional moment between the two of them, so Bobby's got to contemplate that on his own. I thought was, because that's kind of how things happen. It takes you because you can imagine it won't be till like maybe 5 minutes later when he's on the road when the full impact of that will finally hit him. While he's driving, and I felt that was a very real and natural moment, and you can see how difficult it was for Jack to get that out. And I thought that was a really 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 great moment. I thought watching Allie come out on stage for the first time, not necessarily watching her come out, but watching him as he walks out to go play the song. And he's like, I think it was in one of the trailers or something. Maybe they overdubbed another line onto the scene, but she asked him how I don't even know how to do something like that. And he kind of says something like, oh, it's easy. You do it just like this. And he just kind of puts his arms out to the side, walks out into the roaring crowd. It's like, hey,
you just have to trust me.
You just have to, you just have to trust me. Just come on out here and do it. And just the whole time, he's just begging her. It's like, come on, this is yours. These people are here for you. Come out, take it.
Actually, real quick before you go on, I want to add that it's also one of my favorite moments, and we just had that part about visual storytelling, and there's this great moment right there. Like, before that moment, we see Jackson singing a couple of times, and both of those times, he is right in the middle of the spotlight. The spotlight
I know where you're going.
consumes him.
Yep.
But in that scene, he is standing to the side of the spotlight, almost as though he's inviting her to take it. I love that scene. I love how it looks, and the spotlight is coming down right next to him, and the space is wide open, and it's there for her to walk into it.
Yep. I thought that it was just another little piece of visual storytelling, and another little bit of the kind of temporal discontinuity, or the kind of anachronistic nature of it. I thought it was really interesting that above the bed in Allie's room, she's got an LP of Carole King's Tapestry hanging there, which is one of my favorite albums of all time. My mother would sit in our dining room very, very late at night sometimes when I was much younger, and she would put on these records. She would put on Tapestry, or she'd put on an old Diana Ross record or something like that, and I would hang out just outside the room. I don't think she ever knew I was there, and I would listen, and these songs just they've just been burned into my soul. So it's one of my favorite records, and I find it really interesting that to me represents kind of her approach to songwriting and kind of song storytelling, very, very early on. So it's kind of a little clue to what she's kind of given up in order to get where she needs to get to. But it also is this kind of within Jackson and Allie's space, everything is kind of like perennially stuck in like the mid to late 1970s. You know, like the house that they shared is really kind of old looking. Jackson's got the old pickup truck. It's all these old leather and suedes. The styling of Allie's clothing and her hair early on, it all feels very period. And I find that such a, I don't know why it strikes me as such a weird storytelling choice, but I guess it's hard to have those characters doing that kind of music now, because the industry doesn't really work that way anymore. People who do that kind of music don't sell out, 50,000 seat amphitheaters anymore. They play small little clubs, and it's great that they play small little clubs, because I love to see them in small little clubs. But you have to be able to buy that Jackson is this big, huge, rock star, and big, huge rock stars don't do that kind of music anymore. So there's a little bit of the fantasy in there that I find interesting. But I gotta go kind of the opposite way with from Joy on the whole suicide scene. I thought that the way it was shot, it was very artistically handled, but it was very artistically handled to make it seem more sentimental, which, understandably, it's a horrible thing. You don't just want to come right out and just show how horrible it is. But the fact that they didn't show his face the entire time, I thought that
again, actually, at all.
Well,
No.
they did pan up to his face when he closed the garage door, but that's the only time.
Yeah. So I thought that was kind of like, to me, that kind of depersonalized it. It also made it a lot less horrific in an attempt to kind of sell that kind of tragic beauty of it. Oh,
Yeah.
the tragic beauty of the broken rock star who takes his own life, blah, blah, blah. Just no. I want to know, because you have to understand the emotional impact of something like that. It's got to be ugly, because it's an ugly thing to do. That's where I come from on it. It's an ugly thing to do. So for them to kind of depersonalize it and make it look majestic in some way, I was really put off by that.
I have a few free moments in this film that I really appreciate, to be honest. There's actually quite a few. I won't. You know what? I will. I don't care. Y'all have talked a lot tonight. I really, really enjoy the scene where Ali comes to Jackson's show the first time before they sing "Shallow." I love the way that everything is set up as we're seeing Ali enter Jackson's world. We see him like on stage getting ready to play this big event, and he is in his element. He's playing on the guitar, he's comfortable, and you see her, she's hesitant, and like for her everything is like a blur, and she's being told we're going this way, we're going that way, they're going up the stairs, and like she's just like, it's basically like she is entering this world, and we're like right there with her as she's going along. And then it all leads up and builds up into the moment where she finally sings the first notes, and that scene is great. A lot of my other favorite scenes are like small character moments. I love, like I said it earlier, the scene between Noodles and Jackson outside of Noodles' house. From the moment where he finds him outside, and you automatically see the comfort and
Camaraderie.
Thank you, between the two right off the bat, when they're kind of joking about like, you almost made it to the door. I thought I did for a minute.
Oh man, in my mind, I made it.
I love that scene. Another scene that I love is when Ali brings the dog to their house. And that dog is actually Bradley Cooper's real dog.
Aww.
Yeah, so when she brings to that house, and he's like, they're like on the couch, and he's touching the dog, and he's like, I want to thank you because you made this house a home. It never felt like a home before. And that resonated again when Bobby drops him off after he was in rehab. And it hit me because Bobby asks him, where is it?
Mm-hmm.
He's never been there.
He's never been there. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
He's never been there before. So basically, like, Jackson has been living alone in this house all of these years. His own brother, who's also his manager, does not even know where his house is. And that just gives you like another bit of insight into his psyche, into his emotions, into how alone and deep and dark he is. And that the only place that he feels alive or worthy is when he's on stage. So much so that he doesn't want to lose the little connection that he has with the audience, and that's why he refuses to put on the hearing aids. Um, there was another one that just slipped my mind. George, do you have anything else to add while I try to remember it?
I think that's really it. I mean, there's a lot of scenes in this movie that I would probably categorize as my favorite, because there are a lot of really great scenes, and you guys have mentioned some of this. Of course, I went with the morbid option, so I'll just stick with that.
I also want to add La Vie en Rose, the first performance that we see. I absolutely love the way she sings the song, how the flowers, she keeps handing them out to different clients of the restaurant, and I love the moment that she's lying across the bar, and then Bradley's just looking at her, and I don't care what you guys say, I'm with joy. Like it just oozes in that scene. Like the way that he looks at her, it's like no, I'm sorry. Like the way that he looks at her, he's ready to go. Like he is just ready to go. Like there's. Like,
please, he was so loaded, he couldn't have got it up if he could.
I mean, but he was always loaded, though. Like, he was always loaded.
He was always loaded,
like,
Whoa! Whoa!
I don't think we mentioned, we talked about it a lot, the parking lot scene where she sings that song. That's another great scene. I love that when they're walking through the grocery store and he's, like, trying to take care of her hand. I thought that was just such a great scene.
Now, there's a little tag on the end of that scene where he's been carrying around
Cheetos, right?
The Cheetos. He's been carrying around this bag of cheese puffs the entire time, and then
she even asks him, "Do you like Cheetos?" And he's like, "No."
And then you cut over to the driver, and he's just digging in on him. I thought that was
I
great.
love when he's like paying, and then the chick just takes a picture, and like. And I just love like the difference of like their reaction. Like Jackson's like, "It's all right, don't even worry about it, it's okay." And Allie's ready to punch this chick too. I love those moments. Like I just feel like that's where the heart of this movie was. It was in these small character moments. Like I love when they're on the bike and they're like driving to Arizona, and he has his fingers that is like touching the top of her boot. Like he can't help himself. Like even though he's driving this bike, he can't help. He has to touch her. Like he just can't help but have his hands on her at that moment. Like there's so many little moments and details that just like bring so much life and love into this film. Also, when Ali sings on the piano that first time all by herself, what's the name of that song? When the band stops playing. The name will come back to me later, but I love that performance. I think it's one of my favorites in the film, and there are quite a few. I think like all of the concert scenes are just so great. Like it's like this movie really did a number on me. Like I'm not like I guess you guys can tell.
No, they say that actors make the best directors for other actors. I've heard that said a number of times, and this is definitely one of those things. Now, like I said, this is not a plot-driven movie. It's not really even a story-driven movie. It's a performance-driven movie. So just like those little moments, like you mentioned, like the fingers on the boot, just the fact that as an actor, directing other actors, that he would focus in on those things. He would focus in on those very actorly moments of the actors existing in the moment, the way that he would get a little like I think it was in the bathroom scene with the argument. It was very kind of a Mike Nichols, one shot. Let the two characters. Here's your dialogue. Don't even wait for the others. No blocking. Don't wait for the other actor. You two are arguing. Go. On the way that they're tripping over each other and they're repeating each other's words and cutting each other off and things like that. Little moments like that where the actors get to embody a reality in the moment instead of, okay, I have to deliver my line, line, counterline, shot, reverse shot, that kind of thing. Is like none of that going on. It's very much the actors existing as the characters, and there's so much of that in this. When the movie is built that's the scaffolding that everything else in the movie is built on. I think that's one of the reasons why the movie works as well as it does.
Yeah, I actually do also love that bathroom fight scene where he tells her that you're fucking ugly. You're fucking ugly.
Oh yeah, that was horrible.
And, yeah, it was. And that's even her, because he knows how deep that's going to hit her.
Yeah.
He
See,
knows.
you see, I could, and I
he knows.
Yeah.
Oh no, he knows exactly. But the thing is, I was wondering. Oh, just
Knows.
stop. No, the thing is, I what I want to do is I want to watch that scene again and try to get to is he trying to say that she is ugly or what she's become is ugly.
I think it's both. I think
Yeah.
it's both. That's why it hits her so hard, because it's both.
Mm.
I think that's why it hits so hard.
Because she believes both, I think. You know?
No.
That's why.
And another thing is I think he chooses when she's in the bath to have that argument.
Well, that's a very vulnerable time. Yeah.
He chooses that moment, and again, alley and bathtubs, I think, is also like an image that's recycled in the movie, because also the time when she comes out as Allie, like fully decked out, she is in the bathtub with her friend Ramon.
Yeah.
So I do think that he
It's like a
knows-
safe space.
Exactly. So he attacked that space.
Well, when you're as a filmmaker and as a visual storyteller, there are certain signals that you give to the audience about when a character is what kind of state they're in, and anytime a character is nude or something like that, that's basically you saying this is a person at their most raw, at their most vulnerable.
Okay, I agree. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah. All right. Let's move on into cinematography. Mike, get us started.
Cinematography in this film was very effective. Different than a lot of films that I've seen. A lot of the best moments that the cinematography stood out to me was the concerts. The use of lighting. There are so many colors that they could take advantage. Just because of the setting they were in, they really stood out. I love the soft colors, and when they really pulled in and focused on the foreground, the background colors kind of like blended together in this sort of like, really nice, rainbow colored bokeh. It was great. Also, coincidentally, not so much coincidentally, but I'm only saying that because I don't want to be, the morbid one again. But like Joy was. But the cinematography during Jack's final scene was ridiculously good. I mean, just the way that they drew it out so long, it felt like forever. And Jack's mental state, it was always in the back of your mind that was happening. And there was little clues dropped, when he put his hat down on the workbench, when you saw the belt in his hand, all those visual cues that were given via the cinematography there was so much weight that there's pretty much like 10 years of cinema all building to those two little moments.
Man, Joy, go ahead. Talk to us about cinematography.
So Matthew Libatek shot this on digital. As you guys know, I'm a really shoot-on film snob. But I thought this really worked well. I was pleasantly surprised. I thought the color grading and the composition looked really good. And I thought, like that performances scenes, it really just brought out that feeling like you were there, like you were in the audience. And some really great shots in the film that I enjoyed. I liked the opening sequence where Allie is framed in the alleyway while she's walking off. Yeah, that was
Allie in the alley.
Yeah, Allie in the alley.
I bumped into a singer named Allie in the alley.
And where you're getting the title card coming off of A Star Is Born. I love that. I thought that was so classy. Really great shot. Yeah, that was like an old Hollywood.
Yes, very much.
Hollywood shot. And of course, I have to mention how the garage scene was composed, which we all love so much, which is Gray's favorite. And I thought it even brought that visual storytelling to the next level. And,
It was a feat.
I feel like I'm being mocked. Why do I feel like I'm being mocked?
as you are.
Aw.
And
It brings a smile to my face.
well, the theme of this movie is honesty, so we're sticking with that. And to the final shot that was centered on her face, I mean, I thought, wow, what a perfect way to end that movie, just right on her face. So yeah, I thought the cinematography was really well done and really appropriate for this film.
Awesome. Gray.
Oh, the movie was shot on a. I'm looking at the IMDb page here because I find this really interesting. That the Arri Alexa Mini. Now, I would have assumed that a movie like this would have been shot on film. I would have thought it would have been shot like Super 35 or something like that. I understand. I mean, the movie was. I mean, at $35 million, it's a very lean, budgeted film. You want to try to squeeze everything out of that you can. I kind of get the feeling that it was shot single camera. A lot of handheld, and this Arri Alexa Mini, it's a very small body camera, so they could get it in really, really close. And I kind of get the feeling, this movie seemed to be framed almost entirely from mids and close-ups, which is a very, I don't know, almost, I don't want to say like a film school 101 kind of thing, but it is a very kind of like young director, inexperienced director kind of thing. But it there's an immediacy to it because of all the handheld photography. It's very, very guerrilla photography, very kind of, very kind of tour photography. Like, let's give like one of the grips or something like that. Let's give one of the, the people on the bus, give them a camera and let them wander around the stage shooting things. So the performance scenes, I think, work because we're not seeing grand sweeping performance shots. I think we're going to see a huge contrast next month with Bohemian Rhapsody. I think we're going to see the big kind of like, let's do the grand performance thing. This was very much a performance from the point of view of the stage, almost to where we know there's a concert going on, but we're not shooting the audience. We're shooting the band on stage while they're performing. They could be in somebody's basement and it probably wouldn't matter. They'd be playing exactly the same way with the same level of intensity. And then to be able to take that and translate that same kind of energy into all the photography with just the characters relating with that same handheld, very intimate. You could tell that they were probably shooting scenes with like 7 people, on set. Now the 2 actors, like the guy with the camera, just right there, like kneeling on the floor in front of him, a sound guy, and maybe a producer on his phone in the back, wondering when the check's going to clear, and and that's it. Very, very small crew, very intimate settings, and it comes through this intimacy comes through the camera in a way that a lot of movies don't get anymore. It's a very indie movie kind of feel. Now, maybe that has to do with, I think I said this, last week too. Maybe it has to do with the fact that it was funded by Live Nation. It was distributed by Warner Brothers, but it was funded by Live Nation. So they didn't dump a ton of money into it necessarily, which I'm sure that they're like, just sitting back there chomping on a huge cigar right now with the returns. But I think this is one of those situations where if you'd have given them more money, and let them do something more elaborate, it probably would have damaged the film. It would have damaged the honesty of the movie.
I honestly also love the cinematography. I think it's beautifully shot. I think the close-ups are really what do a good job of translating all of the emotion and anxiety and pain and fear and insecurity and all of the things that these characters are feeling. I think the movement is beautiful. I think that some of the shots where they would bathe the characters in the spotlight, the blue, sometimes the red, it really added this extra air of authenticity to the proceedings. Like you felt like you were actually watching these people on stage. Like it didn't feel like you were watching a performance through a movie, but you actually felt like you were at these performances, these big concerts, surrounded by a lot of people. Even it's remarkable because, like, even in the club scene, it feels jam packed, right? Like it's a small venue, and it kind of has this like claustrophobic feel to it. And I think that it even enhances Stephanie's performance because she just seems so larger than life in such a small place, and all of that is really due in great part to how the camera movement is handled, what you're seeing, what you're shown, and just the movements and the choreography that goes along and all of that. So yeah, Bradley Cooper and this Joy. What's the cinematographer's name again? You mentioned it earlier.
Matthew Libatek.
Thank you very much. Yeah, he really shone through. Yeah, let's carry on. Let's talk about the score. I think we have a few things to say about that. So, Ray, what did you think of the score?
I think that the score is really good. I think it's appropriate for the film. I think the songs in them are, again, it's a little bit weird because they feel like songs that are out of sync with time for 2018, but I still like them a lot. They're simple.
Maybe that's why you like them.
Maybe, possibly. They're very simple tunes. They say a lot. It's a completely different experience listening to the album than seeing how they are in the movie. Because in the movie, there's, again, because of the live nature of the performance and the intimacy of the photography, they have a very, very different, and the fact that they're much shorter. I don't think they performed the entire, except for maybe La Vie en Rose. I think that's the only one they did all the way through. I think everything else was kind of shortened.
No, Shallow they did all the way through, and also the song where she plays on the piano. I think that one is from the one right before Rez tries to sign her.
Okay.
I forgot the name of it, but yeah, that one is also. I think she sings that one all the way through. But I think those are the only examples.
Yeah. So I mean, I think they all work really well within the film. They say a lot about the characters, and when you're writing songs for a movie, you can't just write songs and hope they fit. They have to be written from, if it's the characters that are writing them, they have to be written from the character's point of view. You have to write as the character. So like Bradley Cooper can't write a song as Bradley Cooper. He's got to write a song as Jackson Maine, which is a lot more complicated than it sounds, because you have to know enough about how that character works and how that character feels to be able to express their feelings, through music, which is not Bradley Cooper's first language from what I understand. So it's amazing what they were able to do. I find the actual soundtrack album a little annoying because they feel the need to thread dialogues.
Yeah.
That kind of drives me a little crazy. It's like when I want to watch the movie, I'll watch the movie. I don't need you to kind of give me the movie on the soundtrack too. But no, it's a well written, well orchestrated. I can't really remember much of the actual orchestral score, if there was any, which is not an insult. That's actually a compliment, because to me, if music stands out in a movie that much where I remember it, it's probably not working within the scene the way it's supposed to, in my opinion. So I liked it. I think it's really good.
Yeah. Mike, what about you?
Yeah, I feel very similar about the music as Gray does. I feel like a lot of the music did a good job. It was very effective within the movie. I think you can pretty much listen to any of these songs, and they're just fantastic pieces of music on their own. A lot of times throughout the film, I felt like the music was a part of the movie, and it kind of just worked. But at the end, while I still really liked the last song that she sings, the one that Jack writes, what was that song called? I'll Never Love Again. It felt very theatrical in the way that it felt like the movie kind of switched into like a musical, like for just that one moment, or like it kind of like leapt out of the screen to where it kind of broke the immersion I had, because it was so big, and so it felt less personal, actually. Even though that probably should have been the most personal part in the entire movie, it felt so large that it kind of took away from the intimacy of that particular scene. So I think the music is fantastic, and most of it, I'd say, like, 70-80% of it works within the context of the film, but just that one particular scene at the end just felt like it kind of. I would have. I don't know what I would change, but I would change something. It just didn't seem like it felt like it fit right when I was watching it.
I agree. It felt inauthentic.
Yeah, there you go.
Great. Joy, what about yourself?
Yeah, I agree with most of what you guys have already said. I thought a lot of the songs were really good. Of course, my least favorite song was, the one, "Why'd You Come Around with an Ass Like That?" It's not really my jam.
No,
but,
From now on, that's gonna be Joy's theme song. Every time Joy's gonna be on the pod,
every time I come on, you're gonna play that, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Good as a song and appropriate in the scene. Two different things.
Yeah. However, it works perfectly fine in the story. It works perfectly fine with her arc and how her message is kind of being warped. The rest of the songs are pretty much amazing and hit on the theme of the movie about having something to say. They're meaningful, they're soulful. The lyrics kind of express, the individual characters' life experiences, which is, something Gray hit on too. And honestly, whenever Lady Gaga hits that power register she's so famous for, she could be singing anything, and I'm getting chills down my spine.
Oh, you're not oozing?
Oh.
Why can't you have both? Huh? Won't really negate the other, Gray?
In the trailer, when she's like just basically wailing into the microphone, like the part that you hear in the trailer from that one song when she's singing Shallows. But when they're doing the duet though,
Shallows.
Just when she's just basically just wailing in the mic, when she first jumps in after he starts the song, was just amazing. Like I watched the trailer, and if that's all I got throughout the entire movie, I would have been satisfied. But I got that and more, so I was just blown away. So I totally sympathize with you, Joy.
There's one more thing I wanted to add on what Gray was talking about too, about how the music felt anachronistic to him, and for me, that wasn't something I really hooked into, because it's kind of music that I really like, that kind of tone of music. I'm more apt to put on like Earth, Wind, and Fire than I am to listen to anything remotely modern.
Oh, respect.
So, So,
like I was saying, that's why I was saying before, that's why Gray liked it, because it's old school.
Yeah. I loved the sound of it, the feel of it. It was kind of remind me of music I really like to listen to.
Yeah.
Now I do have one issue with the first performance. Okay, so let's follow the storytelling. You've got Allie in the parking lot singing this. She's got a verse and a chorus for a song she has in her head. Okay, she shows up to the show the next night. Jackson has completely written and orchestrated an entire song around that.
I did think about that, but I ignored it.
He calls her out on stage to sing said song that she has never heard before, that has a whole other set of lyrics she can't possibly know, and she goes out and she sings it perfectly.
That's your musical
with harmony
logic.
And everything.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's bullshit.
You know what I love about that? It's what he said. He says, I built an arrangement around it. It's not that great. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's not that great.
I completely agree with Gray on this. I mean, it's something that I thought in my head too, but it was like, okay, I'm just going to accept this and move on. It like, especially when she's singing, and the way they're enunciating swallows, like when they do the swallows.
Yeah, you got to rehearse that.
How the hell do you know to do that? That doesn't make no sense. But
wait, hold on. These are not just regular people. Like, they're not just like us. These are like next level. These people are so talented. Like
that moment, it did kind of, and the thing is, I understand why they did it, and it would have been, to me, and this is, I don't want to I don't want to Monday morning quarterback or anything like that. But if they had built that on, by like in the parking lot, having it be a song that they both, an existing song that they both knew, that they were kind of like playing around, singing to each other or something like that, and then to have him say, "Hey, guess what? We did an arrangement for this song that we both know. I want you to come out and sing it with me." At the very least, there's a logic to that I can get behind. It's the exact same effect.
Listen, you're right, but I don't care. Okay.
So maybe there's a deleted scene. Who knows? For the
Maybe.
parking lot.
Maybe.
All right, you know what? Let's just get out of here, man. Let's go. Let's go. All right, why don't you guys give your final thoughts about A Star Is Born? Joy, get us started.
My final thoughts are real simple. I was encouraged to use my potty mouth, but I'm going to avoid it. It's an effing good movie. Don't be a bonehead. Don't be a bonehead and miss it at the theater. So that's my final thought.
Gray, what about you?
You know, it's a film that uses sentimentality in a really good way. I don't often find myself being pleased with the use of sentimentality in films because it's often very cheap. But this, it used sentimentality in accordance with a sense of authenticity that worked extremely, extremely well. It's as a piece of airtight storytelling. It doesn't fire on all cylinders, but again, this is not a plot-driven film, it's a performance-driven film. You go into this movie because you want to watch actors act. You want to watch these characters be embodied on the screen, and it just fires on all cylinders, and it's just really, really achingly sincere and really good. It oozes sincerity.
Thank you. And sensuality.
Mike, why don't you give us your final thoughts on A Star Is Born?
It was a very emotional film, very enjoyable film to watch. It was beautiful in so many ways. You know, the audio with the music and the scores, the dialogue was well done, and the cinematography was also very effectively done as well. And I feel like there was definitely some cracks in the film, but overall, it's pretty easy to get swept away with this. You know, like Gray said, the sentimentality of it, you can kind of just forget and kind of ignore some of those small issues. And I think that, you know, maybe after multiple viewings, you might start to see that and notice it more. But I mean, after the first experience I had, it was pretty good, and my memories of it are pretty good too. So, yeah, all in all, I say it's a really good film, and I definitely think that you would be missing out on a great experience if you didn't go see this in theater.
And if you can't see it in a theater, make sure that you watch it on a home video with somebody who's got a really good home theater system. Don't watch it on a soundbar. Get a really good home theater system.
Talking about Atmos, you know,
yeah,
you need like 7.1 Dolby Atmos, whatever you got.
Yeah, it's got, because you really need the full richness of those performances to really sell.
I agree with everybody. I loved this film. I really did. It's probably going to end up being in my top 10 films of the year. I wish that somebody would just give Bradley Cooper his Oscars already, because he deserves them. He was fantastic as both the leading actor and the director of this film. He brought so much heart, sincerity, authenticity, all these words that we've used over the course of this pod. I love that he sang. I didn't know he could sing. I love that he brought that into this as well. And Gaga is phenomenal. Dave Chappelle is great. It's really a tour de force performance. It's worth watching. It's worth going through this ride, through these emotions with these characters, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm really now, after doing this, I really think about going to go see it again.
No, it's interesting enough. Dave Chappelle says that this is the only movie that he's been in that he has enjoyed his own performance. He says this is the only movie that he actually likes the work that he's done.
No, he should, because he was great. I really loved his, like, even though it's really one scene, it's two scenes, but really one. But he's phenomenal in it. He crushes it. He crushes it. Well, I think we've taken up enough of everybody else's time. So why don't you guys drop your ads and let's just get out of here. Gray, go ahead.
You can hit me up at only_Gray on Twitter and at notthepopularopinion.wordpress.com.
Yes, thank you. Mike, why don't you give us your at?
Well, if you want to keep up with all the Millennial Mike antics, you can follow me at Velcro16. That's VELKRO16. That's Velcro spelled wrong with a K. Millennial Mike's a name. Sheen Mikezilla is my Twitter name. You can't miss me. I'm a picture of Godzilla on Twitter.
Joy, what about you?
You can find me at Twitter at Joy DC for life. Don't be afraid of my tag. I don't bite hard.
She bites softly.
She oozes.
I ooze.
She nibbles.
I will ooze all over your timeline.
Oh my god. You can reach me at Man United 0710 on Twitter. You can reach the Film Exiles at the Film Exiles. You can reach us by email at thefilmexiles@gmail.com. We are on Pinterest. We are on YouTube. We are on Instagram. We are on Vero. Follow us. Comment. Give us feedback. Get in touch with us. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Thank you guys for being with me. Thank you, Bradley Cooper, and everybody who worked on this great film. And have a good night and take care.